Well, we continue this morning with the Friday edition of News and Views. And the big talking point right across the entire world is the kidnapping and the abduction of Nicolas Maduro. And, it's actually amazing the way this entire saga has been played and reported on. And again, it is tantamount to the type of language that is being used. And when one looks at mainstream media and particularly media in the United States of America, and sadly, even South African media, where they actually look at the vocabulary and they talk about the capture of Nicolas Maduro. And we know that this was no capture because this obviously was a case of a clear abduction with an agenda in mind. Now, Venezuela is clearly at the crossroads, and the key issue here is looking at the global south and the reaction of the global south to the abduction of Nicolas Maduro, because we know that Venezuela, rich in resources, rich in oil as well, but also made its intention very, very clear in terms of joining BRICS as well. And this is why this is so relevant. And because of the time zones, we had to do a recorded interview yesterday, which I did with the former executive director of the IMF, and he is based in Brazil. He was with the IMF from 2007 to 2015, and also the founding vice president of the BRICS New Development Bank, Paulo Nogueira Batista Jr. And this is what we had discussed yesterday, looking at the global south, its response, and what role can actually BRICS play against the background of a country and a president from the United States of America, a country that has acted with impunity, a country that has basically gone rogue, a president that has gone rogue as well. And we've seen it as well with the latest, where Donald Trump is now starting to talk to a number of oil companies. He's made it very, very clear that their interest is on Venezuelan oil, and he's basically taken control, and he's in charge of of Venezuela. So this was quite an interesting discussion, particularly coming through from a high-powered personality in the form of the founding vice president of BRICS, Paulo Nogueira Batista. So let's take a listen to what the pre-recorded interview was all about. Well, welcome back to this special broadcast on Assalam Media, coming to you against the background of what has been taking place in Venezuela, the abduction of Nicolas Maduro and his wife, and also the United States of America making all sorts of noises with regards to Venezuela in terms of control, the oil industry, and we've seen just so much happen in the last few days. Now, to try and understand, and also one needs to unpack and look at this from the global south perspective, and also taking a look at Latin America in particular, in terms of how this is likely to impact, and also another major angle that one can actually take a look at is BRICS, because we know for a very, very long time, Trump has been making lots of noises with regard to BRICS. And this is the reason why we are joined out of Brazil today, Paulo Nogueira Batista Jr., former executive director at the IMF from 2007 to 2015, and also the founding vice president of BRICS New Development Bank. Mr. Batista, good afternoon to you, and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon to you. Good morning here in Brazil. I'm glad to be here.
Well, wonderful having you, and obviously, tapping in on your background and also on your experience, particularly looking at BRICS and coming, from South America as well. Just before we get to some of the critical issues that we'd like to talk about, did
the actions of the United States and Donald Trump in particular come as a surprise to you as far as Nicolas Maduro, his wife, the abduction and the capture and the subsequent statements that have been coming out of the United States of America?
We cannot deny that the abduction of Nicolas Maduro and his wife was a spectacular operation, very successful from the American point of view. But on the other hand, it's important to stress that the Americans have not won the battle. They have not toppled the regime. There hasn't been any regime change. They gave up the idea of having Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Prize winner, govern Venezuela. And they're trying to threaten, they're trying to scare the regime into compliance. Delcy Rodriguez, the new president, they're trying to scare her by threatening. You see, when you spoke quite rightly of noises made by the American presidency and by Americans in general, not in general, but in the political scene, these noises have a purpose. These noises have the purpose of submitting other countries without firing a shot and without losing any soldiers. That's what they're currently trying in Venezuela. It's not easy to see whether they will be successful, because if Delcy Rodriguez, the current president of Venezuela, resists the attempt to colonize Venezuela effectively, that's what the Americans are saying and trying to implement, this will provoke new attacks, probably, because Trump will not be able to back down. Unfortunately, he's committed himself very much to this imperialist intervention. So it's a very delicate situation for Venezuela, first and foremost, but also for Latin America as a whole, even South America as a whole, I would say, and for the global South, because the global South should be on alert now. Latin America on red alert, and the rest of the global South on alert, because we have a rogue superpower in place. That's the reality. A rogue superpower is extremely dangerous, obviously.
Well, this rogue superpower that you speak of obviously has got quite a history, and we've seen it previously with regard to the invasion of Iraq. We've seen what has played in Libya as well, Nicaragua as well. So, there is a fair amount of history. But obviously, this time around, there is a difference, because I think for a very, very long time, we've seen this divide between the global South and the global North as well. And the global South obviously rallying together, because, obviously, one can look at it from an oil perspective, power, that could possibly be one of the interventions. But again, the United States trying to make a statement in trying to expose the global South and BRICS in particular as weak and toothless and unable to stand up to this rogue superpower.
That's true in part. I think Trump has run up against enormous resistance on the part of two countries, especially one of them, Russia and China, especially. So what does the experience show? Trump knows to respect power. So when he sees a country like Russia fighting what it thinks is an existential threat, when he sees China striking back at him when he attacked China with tariffs, he halts. He looks at the weakest. He drives against the weakest. And his immediate goal, why did I say we? Latin Americans are on red alert, whereas, say, Africans or the focus of Trump and national strategy lies in him. Let's say, if you talked to me 1 year ago, that their immediate neighborhood is Mexico, Central America, Canada, Caribbean, but not South America, and not the inclusion of Greenland and all of South America and what they see as its backyard is something new and very, very concerning. The US is expanding its ambitions. Why is it doing so? Because it has realized that the let's say, the traditional imperialism that prevailed in the last 50, 60 years is not working for them anymore. They cannot compete fairly with China, with other countries. So they've broken the rules, ripped up the rules they prepared, and now they want to have in abundance to gain economic, and they just see what Trump and Rube are seeing manage is as well as the rest of the world would use to import American products. It's not a free choice for Venezuela. It's really, like many other countries, it would look rather to China or other countries. China is the main partner, trade partner of most Latin American countries, almost all, you see. So what we have is this rogue superpower in decline, and it's rogue because it is in decline, and it's not willing to accept this decline peacefully. That's what we're living right now. It's a big problem for humanity. It can go wrong in a major way. It is going wrong already in a major way, and it's really, I've been working on international issues, economic issues, and political issues since the 1970s, 80s. I've never seen a situation like this in the world. It's unprecedented, and we're back to the law of the jungle, as has been said by many observers.
Yes. Are we seeing the signs, from what you've just described, of a decline in the superpower status that the United States assumes it has? Because we are talking of other superpowers like China, and you made reference to both China and Russia as well. And it's a proven fact that, military does not always win. When one looks at China, China has for a long time put the United States on edge, not by fighting, but by thinking smart, and they've outmaneuvered the United States on more occasions than one. And we've seen this also right at the beginning when Trump took office and when the tariff war had actually started. And there are countries that are willing to take the United States. So is the United States on a back foot right now?
Look, exactly. China is prevailing economically, and in a sense also politically in the last 20 years, because it has competitiveness, efficiency, organization, and it's outpacing the United States and other countries, not by fighting, but by being a planned, organized economy, vigorous, energetic, looking for solutions, looking for improvement. And the United States is simply not willing to accept that. If you compare the relative power of the United States and of the West more generally, now what it was, say, 2007, before the 2008 crisis, financial crisis, it's completely different. In 2007, 6, 5, you didn't have China so important on the rise. Russia was still weak, recovering from the years of Yeltsin and the collapse of the Soviet Union. And there was the last years of the so-called unipolar moment, which had the prevailing domination of the United States, politically, economically, culturally, etc. Now the United States is losing ground. It's losing ground demographically, economically, politically. Suffice to say that China is already the largest GDP in the world by purchasing power terms. It's the largest trading nation, far above the United States. And what is the United States trying to do? Oh, okay, so I'm in decline. I cannot compete with China on a fair basis anymore. Let me respond militarily. And I think a possible interpretation of what's going on in the Western Hemisphere is that the US decided to consolidate its domination over the Western Hemisphere. And on the basis of the strength that it will accumulate doing this, including by excluding China and Russia from Western Hemisphere largely, the United States will accumulate forces to go against China and Russia. I believe, if I'm correct in this interpretation, and I'm not the only one who does it, China and Russia are red alert, because China in particular knows that it is the main target of United States hyper-imperialism, to use a term that was used in a conference in China last year. which I attended, and which was a Global South Academic Forum. So it's hyper imperialism, meaning that now everything goes. You can do anything. You can kidnap the president. You can invade it. You can coerce it. You can bomb it. Just look at the number of countries that the U.S. has bombed, for example, since Trump came into office in 1 year. I think you have to include there Yemen, Nigeria, Venezuela, a number of other countries. Together with Israel, the attack on Iran. So I mean, he really deserves the Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know why the Norwegians did not grant him that. He has done so much for peace. I mean, which president can hold up the feat of having in less than 1 year bombed so many countries, threatened so many countries? It's unprecedented. So we should, in fact, I think we should institute the Nobel War Prize, Nobel War Prize, and begin by handing it over to Trump.
Yes, but also, Mr. Batista, just looking at the global south and responding, and so also rallying behind countries like China or Russia, and also taking a look at BRICS, because we know Trump has been very, very suspicious. He's been very wary. He's been highly critical of BRICS. And just looking at the role of BRICS as well, and especially for someone like yourself, who has had experience as being the executive director at the IMF for a while, and also the vice president of the BRICS New Development Bank. Just looking at it from a BRICS perspective, countries rallying behind BRICS to counter what we see playing out on the global geopolitical landscape. If you could unmute your mic, please, sir. Yes.
With respect to BRICS, even before he assumed office, Donald Trump was making heavy threats, focused largely on the supposed plans of the BRICS countries to unseat the dollar as the main reserve currency. He repeated major threats to the BRICS, major increases in tariffs if we went ahead with these plans to issue something, to create something alternative to the US dollar system. Now, I understand, and I say what the Trump administration, and in this respect, it's entirely the same with other previous administrations. It understands that the role of the dollar in international affairs is fundamental to the US power project. And it's not willing to give it up on any basis. Now, the BRICS, what are the BRICS doing, in fact? I know the BRICS pretty well. I worked within the BRICS from 2008 to 2017 continuously in the IMF and the G20 and the BRICS, and later in the BRICS Bank, as you said in the beginning. And I can tell you the BRICS were never designed as an alternative to the dollar, as an alternative to the US. Sorry, excuse me, as an anti-US. We were trying to build alternative paths for countries of the BRICS and of the Global South. That's where we continue trying. I can tell you, the BRICS were never, in private or in public, anti-American, anti-US, revolutionary. It's a reformist group. And this reformist group, which includes the main countries of the Global South, is now faced with a new challenge. All of us are, the BRICS included. How to respond to this new world that hyper-imperialism of the US has created. We need to adjust up our stance carefully, of course. And I can tell you, everything the BRICS will do will be careful, if possible, will be in stages, will be long-term. That's the Chinese approach. It's also the Russian approach, contrary to folklore in the West. Russia, let me tell you something. Russia did not want to part with Europe. Russia wanted to be accepted as part of Europe. Putin proposed entry of Russia into NATO. Russia actually entered the G8, as you know. The G7 became G8 because of Russia for some time. Russia asked formally to join the OECD. See, so if you look at what happened in the last 20 years, it's not China, it's not Russia that are being aggressive, it's not the BRICS. it's the US, it's the West more broadly, but led by the US, you see. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but the BRICS is a very complex phenomenon, very, very poorly understood, even among those that support BRICS. There's a lot of hype about BRICS. It's not true. It's not true at all, I can tell you. What Trump said, that we are bent on destroying the US dollar. Very modest steps have been taken within BRICS to move in the direction of an alternative monetary and financial system. Modest steps. We're in the process of, and there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we can speak of having a viable alternative. So I think we must be realistic about what BRICS mean, and especially, more importantly, we need to be realistic about the nature of the threat that that we now face as a world. In fact, even the Americans themselves. I mean, let's say the tradition of America, liberalism, democracy, human rights, ambition. So the question is, will this continue and no resistance, effective resistance, appear, or will there be an uprising against against what the U.S. is doing? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. And unfortunately, let me tell you, every single country in the world that wants to preserve its national sovereignty will have to go to a military program. No doubt about that. Lessons of the recent experience are on the wall, written on the wall. Countries that are demilitarized, that have no missiles, no nuclear weapons, are subject to intervention, military intervention. You mentioned the beginning situation you have to face up to. You can tell me, it's too bad. We have poverty, structure, peaceful programs to implement, but we have no choice. We have to arm superpower. Those losses on a superpower, on a rogue superpower that might attack you or threaten to attack you. It's what we call the power of dissuasion. Most countries in the global south do not have this power of dissuasion. Russia has, China has, India has, Pakistan has, probably. Iran is building it. Libya is not North Libya. Libya had no, was attacked. No, it has a nuclear program. It has the conclusion that all
in the United States of America, uh, with the situation as it stands, what sort of risk is there for the West or the global North to be dragged down by the United States of America?
risk because the West, the West, its traditional allies, notably the Europeans. So what was political called the West, led by the United States, is now a group of countries coerced by the United States. In place is impolite, or rather, it's humility said about Macron. Where he summarized a recent conversation the best. When we talk about the political West, well, we are talking about 15% of the population. The so-called global South is 5% rising of the world